Hello, I'm Joe Batt. My exhibition Connectivity is being shown virtually at the Helen S. Smith Gallery at Green River Community College during this summer. This talk is, I guess, a chance for me to show a little context for that work. I'll tell you a little bit about the background of my work and techniques and how the show itself came about. So we'll bring up the screen here. Sorry about my neighbor's dog. Hopefully that'll add something to the talk. So I work with stoneware clay, and I pinch and coil that clay. My pieces are generally 10 to 12 to 20 or so inches high or wide or long. They're hollow. Some of them have glaze, like the piece here on the left, and some of them are finished with colored pencil, like the piece on the right. There's another colored pencil piece. And they look a little bit like they're from maybe a children's book. You know, there's a narrative going on. They're mostly dry surfaced. These are pastel covered forms. So I make the forms through pinching and forming, and they're hollow. I fire them, and then I put the colored pencil or the pastel on them, and I don't fire them after that. There's another glazed piece here. Going back to kind of the beginning of this interest in technology and media, this is work I did at my first year in ceramics back at the University of South Dakota. And I had forgotten about this work, but I was painting on clay with underglazes, doing depictions of children around televisions with kind of anonymous, semi-conscious parents wandering about. I did a kind of a series of these, and they were about 18 inches high, 20 inches wide on big flat slabs of clay that had a base, so they stood up on the pedestal like a television. This piece happened later. It's a figure about 30 inches high, and I did another series of children with flashlights, little powerful gadgets that give off light that they could use to feel safe in the dark. This eventually became children with various devices, iPods, joysticks, and remote controls. Some of my pieces you can see have less color on them. These have a little colored pencil and some glaze. The rest is just the bare clay showing through, which can be kind of nice, and it's a challenge as well to work that way. So I enjoy doing that. This is what the work looks like today. You've got large drawings and some things hanging from the ceiling. These figures on pedestals or on the floor, kind of all these things hopefully reacting and interacting with each other in this space. Some of them have virtual goggles, some of them have GoPros. And there's just a lot of things happening that are maybe just a little bit odd. I think about you being in a coffee shop or a place where people go to get Wi-Fi, like an island or a world unto itself, and they're not just there for the coffee. How we all currently are moving onto that island more and more, Wi-Fi and so forth. So I've developed some concerns that I work on through the work. Because I come from the 1900s, you know, the quick moving speed of change through technology and media today is stunning to me, and I think it makes it harder to regulate, for our government to regulate and manage, and harder for corporations to care about that. Social media, I believe, creates some stress on society, makes it harder to solve problems and deal with issues, political issues, democracy, create consensus across groups, getting away from the group you agree with and connecting with others. Powerful people can use technology and media to, in essence, rewrite history and undermine facts and history. As consumers and citizens, we're targets of, in essence, you know, kind of profiling by technology to present things to us, sell things to us, draw us in, understand us. And that makes me very concerned about where we're headed. The devices we use, the touch screens and games, et cetera, some apps. It can be very addictive, and particular for children. And it's been documented to have some effect on moods, and in fact, mood disorders that are already there. And there's a huge amount of waste created by the digital paradigm. I don't think we've quite figured out what to do with that. And so that's an interesting topic I work on with my students and in my work as well, this idea of digital waste, and doing compositions using photographs of that waste. Some benefits of digital technology and media. Of course, we've seen in recent weeks, it can help illuminate injustice, and it can help artists around the world connect and support each other around this, and people around the world. So I was really moved by this George Floyd mural in Syria, which of course moved across the globe very quickly once it was made through social media. Also, the online capabilities that we have to work socially distanced, teaching and in community through Zoom, etc., I think has been a good thing. It's not always the most effective, but I'm encouraged that, what would we have done without that during this time? This is work by a student of mine from this spring. I taught an online drawing class, which I've never done before. We drew spaces and places where we've spent most of our time during this quarantine. And so I just think this is a really beautiful statement by this beginning drawing student. This is another beginning drawing student piece, drawing their place where they spend a lot of time and also the place where they would like to spend a lot of time. And I just think it's a beautiful drawing, and it's presented, on their table at home with their pencils next to them. And this has been the experience of how I see student work currently. And while it's been a challenge, it's changed my attitude a little bit about online learning and what the possibilities might be there. This is another version of the installation. You can see the small figures, some on the floor, some on pedestals, some drawn very large on paper and cut out and placed on the wall. These exhibitions, I photograph and I remix the pieces in digital compositions and show them again when the show goes up again. So that it kind of gets remixed and regenerated and recycled. This piece is about connection versus isolation. It's something I talk with students about a lot, something that comes up a lot in discussions about digital media, touch screens, and so forth. So these two figures are communicating, maybe by FaceTime or whatever, and at the same time they're trying to touch each other and connect, and they can't quite do it. So there's that dichotomy or that double-edged or two sides of the coin thing with some of this, where we are connected, but what's the nature of that connection? Thinking about virtual reality with the Oculus goggles, the convincing reality of virtual environments, how that might impact the perception and development of younger people, I think is something worth thinking about. These two have a couple different kinds of, well, one has a virtual goggle, and I think the other has a camera on his head, but they're done with colored pencil and pastels. And again, touching on this idea of the way these things potentially impact development of young people. And thinking about addiction, shiny technology, very attractive to young people and to many adults. A lot of space age technology has gold on it. And so this satellite has gold paint on it. And these two are climbing up, trying to get to it. When these are installed, this one's about 8 feet across. We try to make it so the shadows go across the wall and impact the space a little bit. This is about a 6-foot drawing on the wall here of a child with Wi-Fi goggles. And these are all in the space together in the installation. I think about surveillance, corporate or government, of citizens and consumers. And based on what we've seen over the last few years and recently, I just think about the future and where it's headed. And so it led me to create these hyenas, these predators, and this somewhat innocent rabbit, someone trying to make their way. So technology basically working for those in power against those who don't have power. That's not always the case, but it certainly is happening, and I'm thinking about where that might lead. These are smoke-fired figures. You can see the GoPro on the one on the left there, the left side. And this is colored pencil also. The smoke helps create this nice effect on the ear and on the paws there. So sometimes after I fire the pieces, I will put them in some combustibles in a smoke firing container and just get some burn on them for depth. And then I'll add the pencil. This is a recent installation of the show. So the figures, and then you can see the tall cell phone, iPhone. This is about 6.5 feet tall. It's a mixed media piece. I see the apps as a way to just include more imagery in the show. Some of them are familiar, some of them are invented apps. The figure is called the Princess of Apps. She has iPhone hands and a kind of a dove with apps on it. Last year, I was at a place up near Victoria, BC called MISA, a wonderful summer school or international school. I got to do a workshop. The students and I talked about how to depict an idea using the figures. The idea I was depicting was connectivity. And so these two quick pieces were made together to depict that idea. When I got home, I started working on two figures that were kind of inspired by that experience. So you can see how I work. I pinch from the bottom up. I let it rest a while, cover the edge. After it dries a little, I add some more. Pretty soon I've got the full figure. These are about 22 inches high. And they're in that same position with the hands coming up toward each other. And just thinking about how we authentically connect with one another in a way that endures and isn't just another like. These are finished with colored pencils. And I had a great time doing the dinosaurs and spaceship theme on these onesies. They're placed, when installed, they're placed on a black and white photograph with color pencil color on it of space junk or Wi-Fi junk or waste. More of the drawings. This drawing is about 30 to 35 feet wide, 12 feet high. And it's made of children from different eras, all the way back to the 1920s up to today. And they're basically on that island, living, that Wi-Fi island. And some are kind of aware things are different, some are not. In between the figures, there are those colored small apps on the wall. And those are done with colored pencil on paper, photographed, and printed out on semi-transparent label paper, and then added to the wall after the show goes up. This is a drawing I did on the wall at the gallery at Portland Community College. And, you know, I can't always keep those drawings that are done on the wall. I have to actually wash them off when the show is over and paint the wall. And so I'll photograph them, including this drawing as well. And I'll take those photographs and remix those wall drawings into small digital collages that will, again, become part of the show. I like the idea of lines of figures for some reason, and I've held on to pictures of children that I've found in old newspapers and things. This is from a parade back in the 1920s, I think. And I carried it around with me for about 15 years. And then I drew it and put it in the show. So these kids are from a long time ago, and I just thought they went nicely with this theme. They're waiting for a parade to come down the street there. And then they become a digital piece as well. This small figure is modeled after Olmec figures from Gulf Coast, Mexico, and wearing an Oculus virtual headset. So here he is in a digital composition along with the reference of that Olmec baby there. Thinking about the origins and history and going back in time as we move forward with these changes. So in this installation at the Art Center at Richland, Washington State University, Tri-Cities, you can see the wooden clouds that are on the floor. They're almost like little cartoon, TV studio set props. And they go with the clouds on the wall, and they just help perpetuate that metaphor of that island of the cloud. So the pieces up near the ceiling, the clouds on the floor, the hanging pieces, the pieces on the walls, and then the figures. Hopefully they talk to each other in an interesting way, and it's fun to arrange them in different ways, in different spaces and places, and add new things. Here I was allowed to draw on the wall at South Puget Sound Community College, Leo Fuller Gallery, and then added the apps there. That's Mount Rainier. This is the gallery at Tacoma Community College. The satellites are made of plywood. They're 12 inches up to 8 inches, drawn on with charcoal, pastel, and gold paint. And they just help with activating different parts of the room, different spaces up above, usually. There's a close-up there where you can see the wood grain. They're drawn on the front and back in perspective. This is a large drawing, about 20 feet high, based on a cell tower in my neighborhood. I've always wanted to draw. I love big charcoal drawings. I love drawing on the wall. These are actually done on paper and then cut out. This one's done on paper and cut out. And I really love the way it looks with the show. These cell towers are real common, I know. They're incredibly ugly. So it's interesting to me that they are not always noticeable because we see them so often. As I think about this topic, I've got a list of things that I've looked at. I'm part of a community of practice around digital media and technology in education. And we've looked at things like Marshall McLuhan, who said the medium is the message and wrote many books about that before we all got the internet. Manoj Zamarotti, a book called Bored and Brilliant, about having time that's not on the screen or not doing anything, to just let your mind be. Nicholas Carr wrote a great book called The Shallows about long-term memory and our ability to focus and have deeper thinking in the age of the internet. Dr. Nicholas Kardaras wrote Glow Kids about addiction to screens and how it's impacting children. Peter Bloom writes about the surveillance of consumers by anonymous corporate forces, I guess you might say. And the Laura Flanders Show did a collaboration of YouTube presentations, Digital Security 101 for phones, Androids, and networks, how to make your phone less susceptible to surveillance. I find this resource helpful. It's about fact checking any kind of information you might get on the internet. It's used by writing instructors. It's part of a media literacy resource document I got from Leona Burnham, who created it. And she visited our community of practice and shared this with us. But this acronym SIFT, which is for recontextualizing, getting back to the source and the context of information that you receive. Stop, investigate the source, find better coverage, trace claims and quotes and media back to the original context. There's also a four-step method, another four-step method by Michael Caulfield, 4 moves and a habit that one might use. These could be not just for writing students, these could be for any of us, including artists, as we digest things coming at us. And there's a lot of it coming at us today. This is my most recent digital piece. It's about digital waste. And sometimes I call it space junk. I love doing layers in Photoshop, and I'm kind of a beginner at it, but it is a fun way to experiment and to bring different things together. So this is a photograph I took of my phones and cords and old things that aren't that old, but are obsolete. And I've got more and more of it around, so I use it for art. And just thinking about waste and what we might do with it, and how it's overwhelming us, and will continue to as we consume these things. I'm inspired by artists and musicians who use waste and junk to create art. This band, Kokoko from the Democratic Republic of Congo, created instruments from old bottles and cans, and also electronic equipment, electronic waste such as air conditioning units and things like that. Not necessarily digital, but just inspiring to think about, well, what if I improvise when I'm worried about these things? Maybe there's something creative I could do. And this is what I tell my students. We're the ones who get to help us sort through how to move forward in these times. Kokoko is a good example. Also, the Japanese art collective called Team Lab does digital work that is all virtual. And so they're not making work and showing it virtual, they're creating virtual work. That's inspiring. And of course, not all of us are set up or able to do that or even interested, but it's inspiring to think there might be ways artists during pandemics and using digital technology can make meaningful work. I want to share with you an artist I admire a lot. Isaac Cardall does work about just regular people in the face of huge change, huge forces they can't control. He works with small figures made of cement and places them outside in different areas and photographs them. They're small scale and very moving figures. My colleagues at South Puget Sound Community College in the art department are Liza Brenner, teaches painting and art history, you see on the left. One of her paintings, Colleen Gallagher, there's one of her vases on the right, teaches ceramics. Nicole Gugliotti does ceramics, teaches ceramics and printmaking. Bruce Thompson also teaches ceramics and printmaking and sculpture. And there's Bruce on the right. On the left, Edgar Smith teaches art history. He also does paintings. Lisa Mellinger teaches painting and drawing. Dan Muse is our digital photo instructor. We also teach mixed media together. And Sean Barnes teaches drawing, and we'll be teaching some painting. He also coordinates our gallery. For students listening to this presentation, I want to share with you a couple places I did artist in residencies. And a residency is a place where you can go. It's not a school necessarily. And you can go for 2 weeks, 3 months, maybe a year, maybe longer. Sometimes you can get a stipend. Sometimes you need to pay. Sometimes you can make a deal with the place and use their facilities and work part-time, helping out with the grounds or the kitchen or something like that and get room and board for the summer. Northern Clay Center is a great artist in residency program. I was there for 3 months several years ago. The place is just filled with artists of all different kinds and skill levels, and they're all feeding off each other's energy. It's wonderful. Red Lodge Clay Center in Red Lodge, Montana, a relatively new residency, beautiful studios, amazing natural environment there. And got a chance to do some work there a couple of years ago. And Watershed in Newcastle, Maine, lovely residency on the coast of Maine. A lot of students go there and work for the summer and help out, and then they create their work in the evenings up in the studio. There are residencies all over now, and you can look on the internet and find them. There's a really good time once the pandemic slows down to look at residencies as an option before deciding to go to grad school, or if you're thinking about getting a bachelor's. Artists of all different skill levels, like I said, and some are quite well known and some are not, and you can really learn a lot from each other in that environment. It's a great kind of alternative and a place to spend some time to mature as an artist. The last slide I'll show is about augmented reality. These I guess Wi-Fi goggles that we are starting to see, which superimpose basically the computer screen or phone screen over your eyes and the view of the world around you as you interact in public, say walking through the grocery store. If you wear these, you see different things being advertised on your glasses. So these are something that's coming into being, maybe a little slower, but kind of like the Bluetooth in the ear. They are something people might just leave on and forget that they're there. So virtual reality overlapping with our actual reality is something that's going to be happening more and more. And that's something that I think is worth examining. my contact information there, my email and my website. Feel free to be in touch. I'd love to hear your responses, questions, ideas, anything like that. I want to thank Green River Community College for the chance to show at the gallery there. And thank you for listening to my talk. If you get a chance to see the show, thanks for taking some time with that. Be well. Good luck out there. And thanks a lot for listening.